Let's talk to Marc Ostwald, who's Chief Economist and Global Strategist at ADM ISI. Good to see you again, Marc. So I want to start by talking about those figures out of the United States. GDP for the second quarter, 3%, better than expected. What is America doing right? Is it those tariffs?
Well, I think these are sort of numbers which one has to look a little bit under the bonnet. 3% looks good, but obviously followed that contraction in Q1. It was all about the rebound in trade, which contributed 5 percentage points of this quarter's growth. Contrasts with a 4% deduction in the previous quarter. The metric which most people will be looking at, and if Mr. Trump were so disposed, he could point to the fact that for another quarter, final sales to domestic buyers, which is basically what domestic demand in the United States slowed to 1.1% from 1.5%. It had been for the last 2 years about 3 to 4%. So that is a material slowdown. On the other hand, the core PCE deflator, which is something the Fed is sensitive to, did pick up. It dropped from the previous quarter, but it was higher than expected at about 2.5%. Not really quite in their comfort zone, and certainly not something crying out for a rate cut.
Well, let's talk about those Eurozone figures then. It is growing, if only just. But looking at the biggest economy, Germany, that contracted, didn't it? What's going wrong there, do you think?
In most of the cases, with the exception of Spain and Portugal, a lot of the slowdown relative to the first quarter was down to a payback for the front loading of production and exports that was seen in Q1, which gave us that strong number that we had in Q1. In Germany in particular, and indeed in France, despite the better than expected numbers, the real drag is the contractions in business investment. In France, it was minus 0.8. We don't have the details in Germany, but the statistics office said basically was a drag on growth. There was, on the other hand, a slight pickup in both Germany and France in personal consumption, which is at least something which is good news in the sense that consumers aren't basically shutting up shop.
I want to ask you about Spain, because as you say, that outperformed, didn't it? Why is it doing better than most of the other countries? One aspect is obviously it has a lot cheaper energy than many other countries. It's proving, and you're in these troubled times for Eurozone energy policy, EU energy policy, one should say. Those destinations where manufacturers can basically switch to, and Spain is definitely one of them, which have cheaper energy, are benefiting. It's also benefiting from a solid tourist season. So those two factors are definitely major contributors to that outperformance. But unfortunately for the Eurozone as a whole, these smaller countries really cannot outweigh weakness in France, Germany and Italy.